You guys know I love podcasting and listening to podcasts, and I'm guessing if you're listening to this that you love podcasts too. Have you ever considered podcasting yourself? It is a great way to reach your audience, grow your know, like and trust factor, and not need to show your face unless you want to. If it is something you've thought about but you don't know where to start, then head over to becomeapodcaster.uk/BAP quiz, BAP quiz, to access a 2-minute quiz that will help you work out what type of podcast might suit you. That's becomeapodcaster.uk/BAP quiz. Have you ever heard a teenager say, "Sounds like a you problem"? My daughter used to say it all the time. So in today's show, I wanted to talk about the you problem that we have. Hi guys, welcome back to the podcast. I am so glad to have you here. I just want to say thank you so much for listening to the show. It means so much to me to have people coming back to the show, listening to the new episodes that I put out or listening to past episodes. I see it in my stats when old episodes are listened to. I see it in my weekly roundup, how many people have listened to the podcast in the last 7 days. And it really is a highlight of my week to see those stats slowly creeping up. So I would absolutely love it if you have been enjoying the podcast, if you would actually share it on your socials. You can share it on your socials. Tag me on Instagram at DonnaSPWV. I would love to give you a shout out in my stories by resharing it. But I have really been loving producing this podcast. It is one of the highlights of my week. So today's episode has actually been brought up by a few things that have been happening for me and around me. And it just sort of prompted me to think, oh, hang on a minute, this is probably something that I should share. So it's something that's been happening over the last 2 years, especially with what we have been going through. And I've just changed the way I look at it, and I want to respectfully put to you that maybe it's something you might want to look at a little differently. And that is the idea of when somebody lets you down or when somebody says something to you and you don't like it, it's a you problem. And this is, my daughter would say things all the time. I would turn around and say, well, I can't do that because of X, Y, Z. And she'd go, well, that sounds like a you problem. And I get so frustrated. But actually, the premise of that is to actually look into yourself and see what you can do to change the situation. And this is a bit, it's a bit out there. It's a bit big sky blue thinking kind of stuff. But when you look at it, you are responsible for your life. And you are the one who is with you from the moment you are born to the day you take your last breath. That is all you. You are the only person who is there 100% of the time, 24/7. And that is something that Mel Robbins in her new book High Five Habit mentioned. You've got to be your own cheerleader. You've got to be the person that is there for you. You've got to love you and almost look at it like a third person, that your subconscious and your conscious maybe, that you deserve to be loved and you should love yourself because you're the one who's got to live with you all the time. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. And the issues that I was having was that back in the beginning of lockdown, when everything went on to Zoom, I would find that people would miss appointments and it would frustrate me. And, you might go, rightly so, you've made that appointment. If you had been in the old style of networking where we'd go and meet for a coffee and somebody didn't turn up, you would have the right to be upset about that because you've travelled to the location and they haven't let you know that they're going to be late, or they haven't said that they're not going to turn up and they just didn't turn up. But I think a lot of that was also that we didn't check in with the person, that they were before you travelled anywhere, I'm sure you would have checked, just confirming that we're meeting today at X or whatever, so that people had the option to go, oh, sorry, that's not going to work for me, which gave you a bit more time. Whereas on Zoom, it was like almost an instant letdown. If somebody didn't turn up, it's just like, well, you couldn't have messaged me. It's people forgot to forewarn because they assume, well, you're at home anyway, you're not going anywhere anyway, so what does it matter? And to some degree it didn't. I mean, if somebody didn't turn up on Zoom, you just turn the Zoom off, you carry on with your day. But when you have planned your day around people turning up and they don't, it's frustrating. And I completely understand where people come from. I mean, I absolutely freak out if I've forgotten an appointment and I miss it. Oh my gosh, I feel so guilty because I know how precious everybody's time is. But you cannot control anybody else's opinions, thoughts, and feelings around something. You can only control the way you react to a situation. So we're all human. And we all make mistakes and we all forget things. It's just part and parcel. And it doesn't matter how well you have your diary organised. I'm a big fan of calendar blocking and things like that. And I have it in my list. And actually, sometimes that throws me because if I book in a call with somebody on a day that I don't normally take calls. So for me, my call days are usually Thursdays and Fridays now. I've just recently revamped my calendar. So Thursdays and Fridays is when I will take calls, do podcast recordings, do networking, one-to-ones and things like that. I don't expect to have calls the rest of the week. There's a couple throughout that are sort of set standard calls that I take that I know are there. But if somebody was to say, oh, I can't do a Thursday and Friday, and I was going, okay, well, I've got some time on Monday afternoon, and we booked it for then, there is a higher probability of me forgetting that appointment, even though it's in my diary, because I don't normally take calls on a Monday afternoon. So it's something that I have to be more mindful of and make sure that I set them, at least a week ahead if it's going to be on a day that I'm not expecting. So whenever I'm looking ahead in my diary, I can see it there and it can start to sort of instill in me that I've got that appointment. But I have forgotten and I feel so guilty about it. And that's fine for me to feel guilty about it because it is somebody else's time that I have messed with. But when it comes to what happens to me is part of my life, and how I choose to react to it is going to determine whether I have a good rest of my day or a bad rest of my day. And I don't want to have bad days. I want to have good days. So some of the ways that I counteract this is to always have a backup plan. So using my calendar blocking system, I actually have it written that if I don't get any calls booked in during that time, there is something else that I will do. So for example, on a Thursday morning, if I don't have any calls booked in, I will work on my business finances. So therefore, if I don't have calls, that's what I do on Thursday morning. If I do have calls, I don't do it, but finances isn't something that I have to do every week religiously. So if I don't get to it one week, it's not a big deal. However, if I've got an appointment booked in on Thursday and that person is a no-show, then I have the option to get upset about it and feel like let down by that person, and why couldn't they just email me, or why couldn't they let me know, why all of those kind of things run through your head. Also for me, runs through my head, oh, I hope they're okay, are they ill, all sorts of worries for them happen, and I have to step back and go, no, I'm not going to worry about what's happening in their life. That's their life. That is theirs to deal with. But I'm not going to add to whatever's happening in their life. So, for example, if somebody was to let me down on a phone call, rather than message them and say, hey, did you remember that we've got a call? Which they could interpret a million different ways, and if they're going through a hard time, might not be appropriate. I just let them know, hey, I've been hanging around for 10 minutes, you haven't arrived, I've got something coming up, so I'm going to have to reschedule. Is that okay? And then it's almost like putting it back on me that I now have to reschedule, and it gives them the option to say, oh yeah, sure, no worries, and not have to give me an excuse of any sort, because sometimes people don't want to tell you why they haven't been able to come. Sometimes it's as simple as they just forgot, and you know, you don't want to make them feel bad for that, because you do it too. And you one of my favorite sayings to my daughter growing up was, if you haven't done anything wrong, you can throw the first stone. That's from the Bible. If you can stone he who has not sinned, let them cast the first stone. And we all make mistakes, so we don't need to beat each other up about these things. And in today's world, where everything is all a bit topsy-turvy and it's all a little bit hard to deal with for a lot of us, I feel like we just need to be a little bit kinder to each other when it comes to this stuff. Because yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, it's not the best result, but you can have it that it doesn't have to disrupt your day. So I, for example, recording this podcast, this wasn't my plan today. I actually had a guest podcast due, and my guest was a no-show, and I have no idea why that is, and I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to worry about it, because she's got her reasons, and they are what they are. It doesn't matter to me, because I have got something else planned to do. Now, this is an off-the-cuff result of that happening, but I do have some other podcast outlines ready so that I can record them should I have a gap to record them. So now I'm going to use this time to record this podcast. I might use it to record another podcast afterwards. It doesn't disrupt my day. It hasn't made any difference to my day. She hasn't let me down. Whatever's happened. Hopefully we'll be able to rebook and do it at another time. Hopefully everything is okay her end, and hopefully, like, the worst thing that happened is that she just forgot, and that is completely okay, because I've done that too. So by making sure that I've got something, I'm just looking out my window, guys. It's raining so hard. Oh my goodness. It's like summer came and disappeared on the same day. Anyhow, back to what I was saying. Yeah, so by planning my day and having something available for me to do, should somebody not show up to an appointment, I haven't wasted my time. She hasn't wasted my time. She doesn't need to feel guilty for whatever the reason is that she couldn't come today. She has no need to feel guilty, because I have made my time my own, and I think that's something that we have to take on ourselves. We are responsible for our time, we are responsible for our calendars, and we're responsible for how we react to things. And you can react in a negative way or a positive way, and you can take it that it's an opportunity, or you can take it as somebody's let you down. And I think a lot of the time we need to kind of look a bit more inward and look at what we can actually do to change the situation for ourselves. So I could have sat here and gone, oh, well, that's an hour wasted. I'm just going to fall down an Instagram scroll hole. But that wouldn't be a great use of my time. So by having my calendar blocked in a way that I do, there are alternatives for me. And now we are in a situation where we are going out and we're able to go and visit people, and you may find that you're not at home, so it's not as easy as it has been for me to just switch task and do something else with this time. But you can always take something with you. If you've got your laptop with you, you can work from anywhere, right? That is the beauty of remote working and working for yourself, is as long as you've got your laptop with you, you can work anywhere. And hey, I would see it if I went to a cafe and somebody didn't turn up. I'd be like, cool, I've got an hour working somewhere new, somewhere that's just going to give me a different vibe. It was going to maybe spark some creativity for me, because I don't know about you, but when you sit in the same four walls all the time, you kind of get a bit, oof. stuck in a rut with it. So actually, by stepping out of your home and going to a new location, it can just give you a different vibe and maybe give you some different ideas. So you'll be able to do some work. Most cafes nowadays have internet access, etc. So you can do something with that time without it being a detriment to your work day and your schedule. And therefore, you can go to that person with a completely open heart and an open mind and just say, you know, can we rebook, or, you know, hope everything's okay, with none of that kind of sort of, not snarkiness, but, you know, sometimes if I turned around and said, oh, you know, I'm waiting, where are you? It kind of puts on that person that, you know, not only, because you don't know what's going on in somebody else's life. They could be in an emergency situation, and, you know, this is the last thing they need to deal with is somebody texting them telling them that they're late for something that they know they're late for, and may not necessarily come back with a very nice response if that's the case. If they've just forgotten, it's just going to make them feel incredibly guilty, and I don't want to be the person that's making somebody feel incredibly guilty, because at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. It's really not in this day and age where we can work from anywhere. So I want, obviously, you know, when it comes to client consultations and things like that, you want to be very mindful. So definitely make sure that those reminders are going out. Make sure that you're checking in before you leave your house, that they are going to be showing. You know, there are ways to limit the likelihood of somebody not turning up, but I would say for sure, just make sure that you've got your laptop with you. Make sure you've got an alternative thing to do during that time, so that if the worst happens, it's actually not a bad thing. Then you can come at it from a much kinder, light-hearted perspective, because it's not wasted your time. It's not a big deal. And yeah, it would be great if we all remembered everything all the time, but we're human. We all have flaws. It's what makes us unique. And, you know, one missed appointment isn't the end of the world. And I think, if I say this a lot, if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that, you know, we just need to be kinder to each other. We need to love each other. We just need to give each other a little bit more grace. And missing an appointment isn't a huge deal. So that was just something that I wanted to put out there. I know that especially in our industry, when you have client appointments and you are, you know, booking things in, it can get a little bit frustrating when people don't turn up. I would say definitely have your system set up to send out reminders. You know, my Calendly does send out a reminder 24 hours before, but you can set it up so that it will remind more than once. So you could have it that it's then reminds them half an hour before or something like that. I think you can set it up to work with text. I know it definitely sends out an email, but there is an upgrade option, I think, where you can send text messages, which obviously are more likely to get read than email. So definitely worth the upgrade for you guys as wedding professionals working in the industry, working with clients. I think a text message to them to remind them of appointments is much easier, and you can set that up to go automatically, so you don't have to worry about it. And I think it also sends it to you as well, which is really good, because if it's your appointment, then it's no good if you forget it. So definitely set up those reminders, lead with grace, always have a backup option of something you can do. And yeah, just be kind, guys. So that was my podcast for this week. A little bit different, I know. It just sort of was something that I thought was a good point to address because of the changing way that we're working, and just something that I've noticed other people get very frustrated when people miss appointments. And, you know, we don't need that stress. We don't need to carry that stress with us. And it's on us how we react to things. And I think, you know, for me, having this missed appointment just gives me a bit more breathing space in the day. I've got another podcast recording coming up later, and it just means that I've got a bit of space, which for me is actually a better thing because of my introvertedness. So even though I would like to have got the 2 in the bag today, It's not a huge deal for me. I'm still going to have 2 podcasts come the end of the day, maybe even 3. So it's fine. And I think that's what we've got to remember, that, you know, it's not the worst case scenario. It's a missed appointment, and it can be frustrating, but you don't have to let it be frustrating. You know, we can all get frustrated by people letting us down, but it's what you do in that instance. It's what you do after that letdown that is important for you. And this is not about them, it's about you. Do you want to sit there, be frustrated and angry and cross that somebody hasn't turned up? Or do you want to make use of that time and get something done that needs to be done? You know, I know what I'd rather do. I'd rather just hope that they're okay, get on with my work, and we'll come back to it at a later date. So I hope that helped, guys. If you have enjoyed this, then please, like I say, share this podcast with some of your colleagues. Share it on social, tag me in it, Donna SPWV, and I will share it in my stories too. And I hope to see you next week. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.